The Great Hall of the Galactic Council was bigger than most cities. Thousands of beings from 12 different worlds sat in floating chairs that moved through the air like slow clouds. The ceiling stretched so high that small aircraft flew between, the upper levels carrying messages and supplies to the various alien representatives. Ambassador Kethvar stood at the center podium, his 4 purple arms spread wide as he spoke. His voice boomed through speakers that translated his words into hundreds of languages. The Zelani people were known across the galaxy for their dramatic speeches, and today Kethvar was giving the performance of his lifetime. For too long we have watched the humans spread across our galaxy like a disease, he declared, his voice rising with each word. They take our worlds without asking. They ignore our laws. They act as if they own the stars themselves. In the human section, Admiral Jake Morrison sat quietly in his simple blue uniform. His gray hair was cut short and neat, and his brown eyes showed no emotion as he listened to the speech. Next to him, Dr. Lisa Grant typed notes on her small computer, her blonde hair falling across her face as she worked. She seemed more interested in her research than in the angry alien shouting at them. Captain Ben Hayes leaned back in his chair and yawned. The young officer looked like he might fall asleep at any moment. He had been to many of these council meetings before, and they all felt the same to him. Lots of talking, lots of anger, but nothing ever really happened. The other alien races watched the humans carefully. The crystalline Vorthak representatives sparkled like living diamonds as they whispered among themselves. The plant-like Andorians swayed gently in their special atmosphere tanks. Even the peaceful hegemony delegates leaned forward to see how the humans would react. The humans have built colonies in 17 forbidden systems, Kethvar continued, his voice growing louder. They have mined asteroids that belong to the Council. They have refused to pay the taxes that every civilized species must pay. Admiral Morrison took a sip of his coffee and checked his watch. The coffee was getting cold, and he had a lunch meeting in an hour. He wondered if this speech would ever end. Most serious of all, Kethvar said, pausing for dramatic effect. The humans have claimed they do not recognize the authority of this council. They say they will govern themselves as they see fit. Murmurs of shock rippled through the great hall. Several alien species had tried to resist council authority in the past. None of them had succeeded. The council's combined military might was overwhelming. Their fleets could destroy entire solar systems if needed. Dr. Grant looked up from her computer and whispered something to Admiral Morrison. He nodded and smiled slightly. Captain Hayes stopped yawning and sat up straighter, suddenly looking more alert. Therefore, Kethvar announced, his forearms raised high above his head, by the unanimous vote of all council members, we hereby declare total war against the human species. All human colonies will be destroyed. All human ships will be captured or eliminated. The human threat to galactic peace ends today. The hall erupted in cheers and applause. Thousands of aliens celebrated what they saw as the end of the human problem. The Vorthak chimed like crystal bells. The Andorians released sweet-smelling spores into the air. Even the usually quiet hegemony delegates clapped their tentacles together in approval. Through all of this noise and celebration, the 3 humans sat completely still. They did not look surprised. They did not look worried. They did not even look particularly interested. Admiral Morrison stood up slowly and straightened his uniform. The movement was so calm and casual that it took several minutes for the celebrating aliens to notice. Gradually, the noise died down as thousands of eyes turned to watch the human response. Morrison lifted a small communication device to his mouth. His voice was quiet and relaxed, as if he were ordering lunch instead of responding to a declaration of war. "Control, this is Morrison," he said. "The Council just declared war on us." "Yeah, I know we expected this. Go ahead and start operation." "Lighthouse." The casual tone sent a wave of confusion through the Great Hall. The aliens had expected begging, pleading, or at least some attempt at negotiation. Instead, the human admiral sounded almost bored. Dr. Grant packed up her computer and stood to leave. "Well, that's that," she said to Captain Hayes. "I have a research presentation in an hour. Are you coming?" "Sure," Hayes replied, stretching as he got up from his chair. This got boring anyway. The two humans walked toward the exit as if nothing important had happened. Thousands of alien representatives watched them go in stunned silence. Ambassador Kethavar was so shocked that it took him several moments to find his voice. "Wait," he called out. "Do you understand what just happened here? We have declared war on your entire species." Admiral Morrison paused at the doorway and turned back. "Oh, I heard you," he said with a slight smile. "That's very nice. You should know that the Zelani have lovely ships. Very impressive. I especially like the big red ones with all the plasma cannons. Our fleets will crush your colonies," Kethavar said, his purple face darkening with anger. "We have millions of ships. Our weapons can crack planets in half. Your people will be extinct within a month." Morrison nodded politely. "That sounds scary," he agreed. "You know, this reminds me of something that happened about 200 years ago. A species called the Ravagers declared war on us too. They had really big ships as well. Probably bigger than yours, actually." "What happened to them?" asked one of the Vorthak representatives, her crystal body flickering with curiosity. "Oh, they're still around," Morrison said. "Nice people, actually. They run a farming cooperative now in the Tau Ceti system. They grow the most amazing vegetables. We trade with them all the time." The confusion in the hall was growing stronger. None of this made sense to the alien representatives. How could a defeated species still exist? How could they be trading with the humans who had supposedly conquered them? "You're lying," Kethavar accused. "No species survives after declaring war on the Council." Admiral Morrison shrugged. "Well, I guess you'll find out soon enough," he said. "Dr. Grant, didn't you bring those photos from the Ravager Harvest Festival last month?" "Oh yes," Dr. Grant said, pulling out her computer again. "Their corn was absolutely enormous this year. And their leader, old General Scar, he makes the best apple pie in 3 systems." She showed the screen to the nearest alien representatives. The pictures showed large, fearsome-looking creatures with multiple arms and sharp teeth. But they were wearing farming clothes and smiling as they posed next to giant vegetables. "Scar used to command their war fleets," Morrison explained. "Now, he's president of the Farmers Association. Says it's much more satisfying than conquering planets." The Admiral headed for the door again, then stopped and turned back one more time. "Oh, and Kethavar, when your fleets get to our colonies, tell them Jake Morrison says hello. Some of my old friends are stationed out there. They'll be happy to meet you." With that, the 3 humans left the Great Hall, leaving behind thousands of very confused aliens. The Galactic Council had just declared the largest war in their history, and the humans had acted like someone had told them it might rain tomorrow. 3 days had passed since the Council declared war on humanity. Across 17 different star systems, the largest military force in galactic history was moving into position. The Zelani 4th Armada led the charge, their massive purple ships cutting through space like hungry predators. Admiral Kethavar stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Eternal Glory. The ship was 3 miles long and carried enough firepower to destroy a small moon. Around him, hundreds of crew members worked at their stations, preparing for what they believed would be an easy victory. "Navigator, report our position," Kethavar ordered, his forearms clasped behind his back. "Sir, we are approaching the New Denver system. The human colony should be visible on our screens in 2 hours," replied the young officer at the navigation station. Kethavar smiled, showing his sharp white teeth. New Denver was home to 50 million humans. It would be the perfect place to demonstrate the Council's power. A quick attack would surely convince the other human colonies to surrender without a fight. "Sensors, what do you see ahead of us?" he asked. The sensor officer bent over her equipment, her purple face glowing in the light from her screens. "Sir, I am detecting some human activity, but it is very light. A few patrol ships, maybe 10 or 12. Some orbital platforms around. The main planet. Nothing that could stop us." This puzzled Kethavar. Intelligence reports suggested that New Denver was heavily defended. Where were the massive defense fleets? Where were the weapons platforms that should be protecting 50 million people? "Are you certain?" he asked. "Check again." The sensor officer ran her scans 3 more times. Each time the results were the same. The human defenses were almost non-existent. Sir, it appears they are not even trying to defend themselves, she reported. Their ships are just sitting there. They have made no move to run away or fight back. Meanwhile, on the surface of New Denver, Colonel Amy Watson sat in the underground command center, watching the approaching Zilani fleet on her own screens. The command center was built deep beneath the planet's capital city, but it did not look like a typical military bunker. Instead of weapons and armor, the walls were covered with computers and scientific equipment. Around her, dozens of technicians worked calmly at their stations. There were no alarms blaring, no people running around in panic. The atmosphere was more like a research laboratory than a military command center preparing for war. Ma'am, the Zilani fleet will be in weapons range in 6 hours, reported Lieutenant Carl Brooks, a young man with red hair and freckles. He spoke in the same calm tone he might use to announce the weather. Acknowledged, Colonel Watson replied, taking a sip of her tea. Send a message to the Constellation. Tell Captain Rodriguez it's time to earn his pay. Lieutenant Brooks typed the message into his computer. The signal traveled 8 light-years in just a few seconds, reaching a ship that appeared to be nothing, more than an old cargo vessel drifting near the edge of an empty solar system. The ship was called the Constellation, and it looked like it had seen better days. Its hull was scratched and dented, painted in faded colors that suggested it had been hauling cargo for decades. Any alien scout who saw it would dismiss it as a worthless old freighter not worth their attention. Captain Luis Rodriguez received the message while he was eating lunch in his small cabin. He was a short, stocky man with gray hair and kind eyes. He looked more like a grandfather than a military officer, which was exactly how he liked it. Well, that's that, he said to himself, finishing his sandwich. He pressed a button on his wall communicator. All hands, this is the captain. We just got the go signal from New Denver. Time to show these council folks what humans do when we're not playing nice. Rodriguez walked to the bridge of his ship, where his crew of 12 was already preparing for action. Like their captain, they all looked like ordinary cargo haulers. None of them wore military uniforms or carried weapons. Maria, open the cargo bay doors, Rodriguez ordered his first officer, a woman with dark hair and a warm smile. Aye, Captain, Maria Santos replied, pressing a series of buttons on her control panel. Cargo bay doors opening now. The massive doors at the back of the Constellation slowly opened, revealing the ship's cargo hold. But instead of boxes and containers, the hold was filled with rows of sleek black objects. Each one was about the size of a small shuttle, but they hummed with an energy that made the air itself seem to vibrate. How many do we have loaded? Rodriguez asked. 47 units, Captain, Maria replied. All fully charged and ready for deployment. Rodriguez nodded. Deploy them all. Let's give the Zilani something to think about. Back on New Denver, Dr. Lisa Grant was giving a presentation to a group of worried colonists in the main city's community center. The people had heard about the approaching fleet, and many wanted to evacuate their families to safer worlds. Dr. Grant? Said a middle-aged farmer named Pete Johnson. My wife is scared. She wants to take our kids and leave the planet. Should we go? Dr. Grant smiled kindly at him. Pete, I understand your wife's concern, but I promise you, evacuation is not necessary. Your family is perfectly safe here. But the council has millions of ships, protested another colonist, a teacher named Karen White. How can we possibly fight them all? Dr. Grant activated a holographic projector in the center of the room. The image showed a 3-dimensional map of the galaxy, with thousands of points of light scattered across it. The council operates under a very simple assumption, she explained. They believe that war is about ships fighting ships and planets fighting planets. They think that whoever has the biggest fleet and the most powerful weapons will win. She touched a control, and the holographic display changed to show a complex network of lines connecting all the points of light. But humans have never thought about war that way, Dr. Grant continued. We think in terms of systems and networks. We think about how everything connects to everything else. I don't understand, Pete Johnson said, scratching his head. Dr. Grant smiled again. Pete, do you remember when the Henderson farm had that problem with insects eating their crops? Sure, Pete replied. They tried everything. Pesticides, barriers, Even hired people to pick the bugs off by hand. Nothing worked. But then what happened? Well, your people brought in those special birds from Earth. The birds ate all the insects, and the problem was solved. No more chemicals. No more picking. Bugs. Just birds doing what birds do naturally. Dr. Grant nodded. Exactly. We didn't fight the insects directly. We changed the entire system so that the insects were no longer a problem. That's how humans solve problems, Pete. We don't just fight. We engineer solutions. The holographic display changed again, showing the approaching Zilani fleet as red dots moving toward New Denver. The Council thinks they're coming to destroy us, Dr. Grant said. But what they're really doing is walking into a classroom. They're about to learn why humans don't blink when someone declares war on us. She looked around the room at the worried faces of the colonists. We've been preparing for this conversation for a very long time. The Zilani Fourth Armada entered the New Denver system with all the pride of a conquering force. Admiral Kethvar stood on his bridge, watching as hundreds of his ships moved into perfect formation around the human colony world. Each ship was a masterpiece of military engineering, bristling with weapons that could level entire continents. Magnificent, Kethvar whispered to himself. The sight of his fleet in battle formation never failed to impress him. No species had ever survived an assault by the Fourth Armada. Sir, we are in optimal firing position, reported his weapons officer, a young Zilani female with bright purple skin. All ships report ready to commence bombardment. Kethvar nodded, slowly. He had planned this attack carefully. First, they would destroy the orbital stations to show their power. Then they would demand the planet's surrender. If the humans refused, well, he had enough firepower to make New Denver uninhabitable. Target the orbital defense platforms first, he ordered. We'll give these humans a demonstration they won't forget. The massive guns on the Eternal Glory began to glow with deadly energy. Across the fleet, hundreds of other ships did the same. The combined firepower was enough to crack a moon in half. Fire, Kethvar commanded. Brilliant streams of plasma energy shot out from the Zilani ships. The weapons were so powerful that they lit up the darkness of space like artificial suns. Each blast carried enough energy to vaporize a mountain. But something impossible happened. The plasma bolts stopped, not slowed down, not deflected. They simply stopped moving, hanging motionless in space as if they had hit an invisible wall. The deadly energy that should have destroyed the human orbital stations instead faded away harmlessly, like fireworks dissolving in the night sky. What in the name of the void? Kethvar whispered, his forearms trembling with shock. Sir, the weapons officer said, her voice shaking. Our weapons fire has been completely neutralized. All ships report the same thing. It's like we're shooting at nothing, but nothing is stopping everything. Kethvar stared at the tactical display. His sensors showed empty space around the human orbital stations. No shields, no barriers, no defensive fields of any kind. Yet somehow the most powerful weapons in the galaxy had been stopped cold. Fire again, he ordered. All ships, maximum power. The second salvo was even more impressive than the first. Every ship in the Fourth Armada fired at once, creating a storm of energy that could have melted an asteroid. The result was exactly the same. The plasma bolt stopped in midair and faded away. On New Denver, Colonel Watson was receiving reports from communication stations across human space. She listened to each report with the same calm expression she might wear while reading the morning news. Ma'am, the Vorthak planet crackers have been stopped dead in the Kepler system, reported Lieutenant Brooks. Their weapons cannot penetrate our defensive field. The Andorian bioships are reporting complete system failures near Alpha Centauri, added another technician. Their organic weapons are shutting down on their own. And the hegemony assault on Mars colony? Colonel Watson asked. Lieutenant Brooks smiled. Well, ma'am, let's just say that Mars isn't where they expected to find it. Not where they expected? Watson raised an eyebrow. Dr. Grant looked up from her computer station. Orbital mechanics are fascinating, Colonel. When you can manipulate space and time on a planetary scale, you can move inconvenient objects to more convenient locations. Mars is currently enjoying a lovely orbit around Proxima Centauri. The hegemony fleet is very confused. Across the galaxy, similar scenes were playing out wherever Council forces had expected to find easy victories. The crystalline Vorthak had brought their famous planet-cracking weapons to the Kepler system, only to find that their energy beams simply bent around the human colonies like light around a lens. The Andorian bioships, living vessels grown rather than built, had approached Alpha Centauri expecting to release their deadly spores. Instead, their weapons had somehow evolved into harmless flowering plants that now decorated the ship's hulls in beautiful patterns. The peaceful hegemony had been forced to join the war against their nature, sending their tentacled ships to destroy the human colony on Mars. But when they arrived at the coordinates where Mars should have been, they found only empty space and a small sign that read, "Gone fishing, back next Tuesday." In the emergency session of the Galactic Council, panic had replaced the confidence of just days before. Representatives from 12 species shouted over each other, demanding explanations that no one could provide. "This is impossible," declared the Vorthak ambassador, her crystalline body flickering rapidly with agitation. "Our weapons can destroy stars. How can they be stopped by empty space? Our bioships have been serving us for 1,000 years, added the Andorian representative, his plant-like form swaying with distress. "They have never failed us before. How can their weapons turn into flowers?" The hegemony delegate waved his tentacles in confusion. "We had the exact coordinates for Mars. Our navigation systems are perfect. Planets do not just disappear." Admiral Morrison, who had remained on the council station throughout the crisis, sat quietly in the human section, reading a book about gardening. He seemed completely uninterested in the chaos around him. Finally, the Zelani representative activated his communication device. The voice of Admiral Kethvar came through the speakers, and it was clear that the proud military commander was shaking with fear. "Council members," Kethvar said, "I am reporting a complete failure of our assault on New Denver. Our weapons are useless. We are trapped in some kind of invisible field. Nothing we do has any effect on the human defenses." The hall fell silent. The Fourth Armada had never failed before. It was the most powerful military force any of them had ever seen. "Admiral Kethvar," the council leader said, "are you requesting reinforcements?" There was a long pause before Kethvar answered. "Sir, I don't think reinforcements would help. I don't think anything would help. We're not fighting a military force. We're fighting something that makes our weapons meaningless." Admiral Morrison looked up from his book and cleared his throat. The sound was quiet, but somehow it carried through the entire hall. Thousands of alien representatives turned to look at him. "If I may," Morrison said politely, standing up and straightening his uniform. "I think there might be some confusion here about what you're dealing with." He activated a holographic projector, and the air above the council chamber filled with images that made the alien representatives gasp in shock. The hologram showed the true scope of human civilization, not the few dozen colonies the council knew about, but thousands of worlds connected by structures that spanned entire solar systems. Cities that existed in folded space, containing billions of people in areas no larger than a city block. Factories that operated in accelerated time, producing decades of work in minutes. "You see," Morrison explained, his voice calm and educational, "when humans left Earth 500 years ago, we didn't just learn to travel between stars. We learned to engineer space itself." The images showed human ships that existed in multiple dimensions simultaneously, moving through space by folding it like paper. They showed defensive systems that could relocate entire planets to safer locations, and weapons that could rewrite the laws of physics in localized areas. "The thing is," Morrison continued, "we never wanted to conquer anyone. We're perfectly happy managing our own affairs. But when you threaten our people, we have to respond appropriately." He looked around the hall at the stunned faces of the alien representatives. "This isn't surrender you're experiencing. This is education. We're showing you what we're capable of, so you understand why declaring war on humans is generally considered a bad idea." The revelation of humanity's true power sent shockwaves through every corner of the galaxy. In the council chambers, alien representatives sat in stunned silence as Admiral Morrison's holographic display continued to show impossible technologies and structures that dwarfed their greatest achievements. Captain Rodriguez's ship, the Constellation, had dropped its disguise near the Zelani flagship. What had appeared to be a broken-down cargo vessel now revealed itself as something that hurt to look at directly. The ship seemed to exist in several places at once, its hull shifting and changing as if it were made of liquid starlight. "This is Captain Rodriguez calling the Zelani vessel Eternal Glory," came a friendly voice over the communication system. "Admiral Kethvar, we need to have a chat." Before Kethvar could respond, he found himself standing on an unfamiliar bridge. His senior officers appeared around him, all looking as confused and frightened as he felt. They had not used transporters. There had been no flash of light or energy beam. They had simply been in one place, and now they were in another. "Welcome aboard the Constellation," Captain Rodriguez said with a warm smile. He was a short, ordinary-looking man who seemed more like a shopkeeper than a starship captain. "Sorry about the sudden trip. Our transporters work a little differently than most." "This is impossible," Kethvar whispered, his forearms shaking. "No transporter can move people through shields. Our ship has the best defenses in the galaxy." Rodriguez chuckled. "Well, that's the thing about shields. They're designed to keep out things that exist in normal space. We don't really operate in normal space anymore." One of the Zelani officers pointed at the view screen, which showed impossible images of space folded like origami, with stars arranged in geometric patterns that should not exist. "What have you done to the universe?" the officer asked in terror. "Oh, we haven't done anything to the universe," Rodriguez replied. "We've just learned to work with it instead of against it. The universe is much more flexible than most people think." Meanwhile, Dr. Grant was broadcasting on all council communication frequencies. Her voice remained calm and educational, as if she were giving a lecture to university students rather than explaining humanity's victory in the largest war in galactic history. "The Council has always operated under the assumption that technological advancement follows a straight line," she explained. "You build faster ships, then bigger weapons, then stronger shields. But humans have always been problem solvers rather than warriors." Her broadcast included images of human achievements that had been hidden from the Council for centuries. There were cities built inside folded space where millions of people lived in areas that appeared to be only a few blocks wide. Factories operated in accelerated time fields, completing years of work in hours. Gardens grew in impossible colors, tended by farmers who could make plants grow in pure vacuum. 400 years ago, Dr. Grant continued, humanity encountered a species called the Architects. They were ancient beyond measure, and they taught us that the laws of physics are more like suggestions than rules. They showed us how to bend space, stretch time, and reshape reality itself. The images showed humans working alongside beings of pure energy, learning to manipulate the fundamental forces of the universe. They learned to move planets by adjusting their orbital mechanics. They discovered how to create matter from nothing and make energy flow backward through time. "The Architects had one simple lesson for us," Dr. Grant said. "They told us that any species advanced enough to threaten others was also advanced enough to help them instead. They challenged us to find solutions that benefited everyone rather than just ourselves." Across the galaxy, the Council's grand invasion was being transformed into something completely different. The Andorian bioships found that their weapons had not malfunctioned, but had been upgraded. Their living vessels were now capable of healing damaged ecosystems and growing new forms of life that had never existed before. The Vorthak planet crackers discovered that their energy weapons had been converted into terraforming tools. Instead of destroying worlds, they could now reshape lifeless rocks into garden paradises in a matter of hours. The Hegemony assault fleet had been gently relocated to a human research station, where their ships were being fitted with new technologies that would allow them to explore regions of space they had never dreamed of reaching. Back in the council chambers, the mood had shifted from panic to wonder. Admiral Morrison was patiently answering questions from increasingly amazed alien representatives. "But why hide all of this?" asked the Vorthak ambassador, her crystalline form now glowing with curiosity rather than anger. "Why pretend to be primitive when you have such amazing abilities?" Morrison smiled. "Would you have believed us if we had simply told you?" Would you have listened if we had said we could move planets and fold space? Or would you have assumed we were lying and attacked? Us anyway? The crystalline being flickered thoughtfully. We would have attacked, she admitted. We would have seen you as a threat that needed to be eliminated before you became too powerful. Exactly, Morrison said. So we waited. We let you see us, as simple colonists who just wanted to farm and trade. We hoped that eventually we could share our knowledge peacefully when you were ready to accept it. The Andorian representative swayed gently in his atmosphere tank. But we declared war on you. We threatened to destroy your people. Why didn't you simply eliminate us? Morrison looked genuinely puzzled by the question. Why would we do that? You're not evil. You're just scared. Every species gets scared when they encounter something they don't understand. We've been there ourselves. He activated another holographic display, showing images of early human history. The aliens saw pictures of humans fighting each other, with primitive weapons, destroying their own cities, poisoning their own planet. We used to be just like you, Morrison explained. We thought that the strongest person was the one who could hurt others the most. We nearly destroyed ourselves before we learned better. The architects helped us understand that true strength comes from helping others become stronger. Dr. Grant's broadcast was reaching its conclusion. The war that the council declared on us was never really about conquest, she said. It was about fear. You were afraid that humans would take away your power, your territory, your way of life. But we don't want any of those things. She showed new images of human colonies working alongside alien settlements, sharing technologies and resources, human farmers teaching Andorians how to grow crops in impossible conditions, Zelani engineers learning to build ships that could travel between dimensions, Vorthak artists creating sculptures from crystallized time itself. What we want is what the architects taught us to want, Dr. Grant continued. We want to solve problems together. We want to explore the universe together. We want to build something better than any of us could create alone. In the weeks that followed, the council was restructured as a cooperative organization rather than a ruling body. Humanity shared their advanced technologies freely, but they also insisted that every species contribute their own unique knowledge and abilities. The Zelani became master shipbuilders, creating vessels that could carry entire civilizations between stars. The Andorians developed new forms of life that could thrive in the vacuum of space. The Vorthak learned to grow crystal computers that could process information at the speed of thought. Admiral Morrison retired to his small farm on New Denver, where he grew tomatoes that tasted like sunshine and occasionally gave advice to young diplomats from a dozen different species. Dr. Grant established the Galactic University, where beings from across the galaxy came to study the gentle art of bending reality to serve life rather than death. Captain Rodriguez continued flying his impossible ship to places that existed only in mathematics, occasionally picking up new species who wanted to learn the secret of folding space like paper. The galaxy had learned the most important lesson in the universe. When humans didn't blink at a declaration of war, it was not because they were fearless. It was because they had been preparing for centuries to turn that war into a conversation about how everyone could win together. War, as it turned out, was just another problem that could be solved with enough patience, creativity, and kindness.